As we look at moisture conditions across the state, we're in North Platte. Bob Klein is our guest. Bob is a UNL Extension Western Nebraska crop specialist. We know it's been dry across areas of the state, and there are obviously pockets that are doing better than others, but how is North Platte doing?
Yeah, when we look from April 1st, we're about 46% of normal for the months of April, May, and June here. McCook down in the south, about 70 miles, is about 49% of normal for those 3 months. And so you can see, coupled with the high temperatures we've had, and we've also had a lot of wind and low humidity, we really have been moisture deficit.
Before we get into this year's corn crop, how did this year's wheat crop hold up in that moisture?
Yeah, well, the biggest factor there in this area was lack of precip in those months, April, May, June. We ran out of water, and so in this area we're probably running a lot of 40 bushel wheat. Normally we'd be by 60 and 70 if we'd have had some good moisture during April, May, June to finish out. The other thing too that hurt us some on the wheat yields was the high temps. The longer the filling period or the cooler the temp is, the higher the wheat yields. But the biggest factor this year was just lack of water.
And obviously the wind's blowing today, so it's expected to get up into the triple digits today, tomorrow, and maybe even the next day. How's the corn crop holding out?
Yeah, the corn crop so far in most areas still looks pretty good, but it's running out of water. Yeah. There is some areas, some irrigated areas and so forth where they haven't been able to get water on, planted a high population with no residue. It's running out of water early. But in general, the irrigated corn crop looks pretty good. And the dry land is still pretty good in most situations here, but a lot of it's going to need some soil water or precip before long.
What's helping the corn right now get along? You mentioned residue, and residue's making a big dent.
Yeah, the biggest thing is crop residue to help these dryland crops out. Some research that we did here at North Platte a few years ago showed that in irrigated corn on bare soil, 35%, over a third of the crop water use was in evaporation. With good crop residue from like wheat stubble, we can reduce that all the way down to 15%, or that's a 20% saving in crop water use.
We're standing in a field that you're utilizing for Skiprow planting research. The corn is noticeably smaller, but how is it doing with what you're looking at?
Yeah, of course, the reason it's smaller, we planted late on this research and so forth. And the reason why is we wanted to see some of the stress conditions on it. And we planted plant 2, skip 2, plant 2, skip 1, and then the normal 30-inch spacing on rows. And in general, we've had good luck doing this. The key to the Skiprow thing is having good crop residue, because you've got to keep that evaporation down between the rows.
The corn that's not doing well in this part of the state, or any part of the state for that matter, and if farmers are thinking about chopping it, what do you recommend? What are some things to keep in mind?
Yeah, one of the things is I always tell our people out here that crop residue is so important in trapping snow, reducing wind velocities and so forth, and helping us collect moisture for the next crop. Out in this area, the normal practice would be after corn is to fallow it the next year, and we prefer doing it with chemicals instead of tillage, and then plant wheat the next fall. Well, if you're trying to fallow without crop residues, the wind is really, soil is really subject to wind erosion and water erosion. So we don't recommend that you cut it for silage. If you positively have to cut it for silage, leave 8 rows every so often to reduce those wind velocities, trap snow, and help out. But in general, that will be awful costly silage and so forth, and you'll be ahead just waiting and harvesting any grain, if there's any grain out there, and leaving the crop residue because it's so valuable to you.
Bob Klein is our guest, and obviously with forage prices the way they are going into winter, it could be a very tough decision for those producers.
It could be, and like I say, if you positively have to, leave some out there to trap some snow and so forth.
Bob Klein, our guest, a UNL Extension Western Nebraska crop specialist. I'm Jeff Wilkerson here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Extension, where you can know how, know now.